Hello viewers, I'm Nikhar Agarwal from the Economic Times CIO. Today we have Bryan, who is CEO of Liferay. Welcome, Bryan.
Thank you very much for having me.
As you know, today companies are investing in digital technologies for customer enhancement and for a unified platform on which they can manage their multiple customers as well as their internal operations. How Liferay helps businesses to enhance their customer engagement and customer management through different channels such as web, mobile, and other connected devices.
So I think maybe to put it simply, the goal of every company is to make a connection with their customers. And in the past, CIOs, IT leaders would force customers to come to the technology where they were. And so in the very far past, these would be actual banking systems in the branches. Later on, you could have an ATM, and then finally with the internet, you had a website. Well, now the different channels where you can reach customers has expanded limitlessly. It's not just your mobile device, it's not just a website. It's a chat interface, it's notifications, it's text messages. The important thing now is that technology is readily available to go to customers where they are, and then through those interactions to give customers easy access to your system so that they can get things done. You can use those points of interactions to learn about your customers, and then once you learn about them, to provide the services, the offers that customers need in order to build that long-term relationship with them.
Right. Which technologies are helping customers to gain the power and capabilities of good customer engagement platform, and how Liferay supports there?
So that's the thing with the technology being what it is today. The available technology is actually quite simple. It's just pure HTML, CSS, JavaScript. It's also, again, like I mentioned, these texts and notifications. It's right. Just all of the consumer technologies that have become available in the last 5 years. That's all very simple. What is complex is how do you orchestrate all of the different services and systems behind the scenes so that it's seamless to the end customer, so that it looks like one continuous journey, and so that you can, again, collect that customer feedback and data wherever they go.
Right. How digital technologies help businesses to analyze the collected feedback and basis of that data points? What are the insights gained by these technologies, and how Liferay touch upon these pointers for the businesses to manage those data insights and make it included in their decision-making capabilities?
So I think you could look at it in two ways. One is at scale and one is at the individual level.
Okay.
At the individual level, I think you can look at what customers are doing across your systems, analyze their journey, and then figure out, are there places where they're getting stuck? So if you're an insurance company and you, one of the things that you want to care about is how long does it take for that customer to get a quote, right, or to actually apply for an insurance policy and be approved. You can remove the individual barriers to that person fulfilling that goal. At scale, what you can look at is groups of customers, different target audiences, different segments, and how they behave so that you can start to evolve your systems and your processes and even your offerings to better fit their needs based on what you're seeing from the customer data. In the Financial Times the other day, there was a study about how different clinics in the UK were adopting new drugs as they came onto the market, and what they found was that the data was revealing to them what different patterns of human behavior were, whether those drugs were being prescribed immediately, whether they were being prescribed slowly over time, or whether there was sort of a delay and then an immediate switch. Okay. Again, because we're now able to study customer behavior at scale, we're going to be able to find these new insights that weren't available before.
Right. Bryan, as you mentioned the study of customer behavior and patterns, what are your views on the growing needs and changing paradigms of the businesses while investing in these digital technologies? What are your global perspective on it?
I think the common denominator is that as we all become customer centric, we need to look at things from that outside in perspective. So I alluded to it in the beginning. We no longer have the luxury as companies providing services and products to force customers to conform to our systems and processes. We really have to conform to the needs and the behaviors of those customers. And I think that's a principle that can be applied generally across the board.
Right. How Liferay is addressing these challenges? What is your strategy around touching the business pain points in terms of evolution of technology and the growing needs which we have discussed right now?
So one of the pragmatic ways that we're changing our mindset about this is, we have a portal heritage. A portal was a traditional website where customers came to log in and to access the company's services, to download invoices, to pay bills. Now we're actually evolving toward more of a headless architecture. Headless is a technology approach, but it is, again, supporting this changing business need of meeting customers where they are. So platform like Liferay can connect to your billing systems, your ERP systems, your procurement and shipping systems, but then you can send those updates and send that information to a text message or to a chatbot or to a website or a mobile app. So again, we're changing the way that we're designing our technology to better fit the needs of the customers and meet them where they are.
Right. So Bryan, what do you think are the key factors and challenges faced by CIOs while implementing customer engagement platform and these digital technologies which we have recently discussed?
I think the modern CIO has to switch that mindset from I'm a cost center, I'm trying to standardize technology and platforms in order to save the company money and to reduce the costs of IT, to how can I better understand the business and what their goals are, and then use my understanding of technology to deliver transformative change. That mindset shift really is something that I think comes first. And then I think along with that, what happens is you start to think more about time as the limiting factor rather than just money. So before you might think, well, how can I deliver a certain solution, a website, a project under a certain budget? Now it's really more, how can I quickly get something out to market? Again, engage those customers and partners, learn from their behavior what they actually need, and then quickly iterate with the second, third, and fourth version. And by the way, as you're doing that, you're collecting data along the way, and you're using that data to better inform your future decisions.
Correct. Bryan, in India, companies are facing some challenges with respect to several features which they focus while investing in digital technologies. Flexibility, agility are one such features which CIOs look before investing in digital technologies. Taking the global perspective, what do you think are the digital pitfalls which global companies face while investing in digital technologies and innovating their customer engagement platform with such growing technologies and innovations?
So I think the first pitfall is having too much of a build your own mentality. Most of the technologies that are going to enable business are already out there. You have people who are focused on providing best-in-class solutions. I think as CIOs, you really want to be selective about where you invest in custom development in the areas of your competitive differentiation and business advantage. Whether it's the way that cloud providers are able to provide infrastructure and uptime and backups and scaling, or whether it's Liferay as a vendor of content management and digital experience software, use technology vendors to get those commodity aspects of your digital initiatives in place, and then work with your business leaders to define your competitive advantage and invest there. I think the second pitfall is maybe avoiding cloud. I don't think this is as much of a problem, but to the extent that some CIOs are still worried about security, privacy, I think it really is in 2020 time to embrace the cloud because the business value of the cloud is so clear. There's always going to be concerns around data privacy and regulation. especially for multinationals doing business in Europe. And it's important for you to have a policy and a process for ensuring that that personal data remains secure, but not to necessarily shy away from the insights and advantages that you can gain from making sense of personal data. And I think the key principle there is that you need to provide your customers, you need to provide consumers with value in exchange for data so that they're going to be willing to opt in.
Correct. As a horizontal vendor, Liferay is well suited for several use cases span industries. Would you like to share some of the use cases from your customer journey from a global perspective?
Yeah. So Liferay has traditionally been very strong in financial services, insurance, healthcare, education, government. Here in India, we have quite a long history in financial services and insurance, as well as in the government sectors. In the US, a couple of case studies that come to mind. One is Spire Energy. So Spire was the result of a mergers and acquisition of 4 major energy providers in the Midwest, including Alabama Gas Company, Missouri, and 2 others. This resulted in about 1.3 million customers. And the business initiative there was they were reinventing themselves from a gas provider to an energy provider. And as part of the rebrand, they wanted to ensure that the customers of these former 4 entities had a seamless transition to the new brand experience. And Liferay really was part of the technology stack that provided that. We ensured that the user experience was consistent regardless of which former company you came from. But on the back end, we did a lot of work to integrate old SAP systems or Salesforce systems that contain the old customer data. Second example that comes to mind is West Bend Mutual Insurance. They're a mid-market company, which means they do about $1 billion in annual turnover. So they're competing with the giants in insurance like Allianz or Prudential, which have enormous budgets for digital transformation.
Exactly.
The way that Liferay is helping them is we've taken some of the best practices of applying digital technology to insurance business models, and we've made those easy to access through pre-built solutions for the insurance industry. So one of the ways that they sell insurance is through third-party independent agents. These agents can be selling West Bend's policies or those of the other insurance companies that they service. And so in order to have them favor West Bend, they were able to build with Liferay a superior digital agent portal experience that helped these agents not only to get applications processed more quickly, but to renew policies and to do claims payments much faster. And after the first 12 months, they experienced about 70% of new applications going through the digital channel, which means that those applications were being filled faster, and it's actually reducing the amount of cost to the insurer as well. The other thing I would mention is that around the world and here in India, we work with over 100 different channel partners. I believe we have about 160 in the program that can then leverage specific expertise they have in different verticals. Here, for example, in India, one of our partners has been working with insurance companies that are wrestling with how to create new business models like micro insurance policies for, let's say, shared ride services and other things like that here in India and in the Middle East and Africa as well.
Correct. Bryan, as we have discussed much about innovations and digital technologies, how do you think the open source community and technologies associated with open source platform is helping CIOs to implement these technologies and to get a global perspective and availability of this platform has helped businesses to gain that competitive advantage in the market? What's your view on it?
So as I mentioned before, I think the best way to think about open source is that it's been a superior development model for creating new software to solve problems. The more people you have looking at the code, the more stable and robust it's going to be. Now that you have these tools, CIOs, now that you can choose from an endless library of high quality open source software, how will you then use that, a lot of times commodity software, to then focus on the areas of your competitive advantage. Because, in this day and age, you should not be reinventing the software that's already being provided by open source vendors. Okay. Same with the cloud, same with source code management with GitHub and so forth. There's no need to invest in commodity. Use open source to focus on what's going to keep your business ahead of your competitors in the future.
Right. So Bryan, how Liferay is collaborating with the open source community and how this platform is helping you from the business perspective?
So Liferay has benefited from open source in a lot of different ways, but I think what's most relevant today is that it allowed us to get the software in front of as many real users as possible. These are enterprise companies, large companies, again, trying to solve a problem. And Liferay technology being open source meant that they were able to use it without barriers to do proofs of concept, to actually even get lightweight first versions out. Once the value was proven, or if they gave feedback to us once we evolved the product, then we're actually ready to take it into more of a robust production environment. That's where, again, we can provide our expert services to make sure that the thing runs well in production and that you're able to evolve it into the future. The other thing that we're doing is we're identifying the common areas of business challenges in the horizontal use cases, whether it's customer portals, websites, intranets, and other Liferay use cases. We're trying to help our customers solve the common business problems like, how do I understand where customers are getting stuck in their journey? How can I better target and personalize content to those users? How can I better manage these projects in production and make sure that they scale properly, make sure that backups are taken care of, make sure that we can leverage the cloud for its power to crunch data and provide analytical insight. All of these things that we as a vendor, we can focus on so that you can focus on the areas that your business is competitive in.
Correct. Bryan, as we discussed the business compatibility and the competitive advantage in the market, what are your top line business plans and strategy for year 2020?
So the application of intelligence, AI and machine learning is one of the biggest areas. Okay. We think we've gone through sort of the first wave of hype and everyone kind of being afraid of, I need to do something with AI ML, to AI ML, they're tools like anything else. Now all of the cloud providers, AWS, Microsoft, IBM, they provide ML algorithms kind of as a service. But the important thing is, how do you apply those things to your business? In the consumer world, vendors like Amazon, in their retail business, they've applied that for things like hyper-personalization, one-to-one targeting of products and services to consumers like us. What does that look like in the B2B world? If I'm a B2B seller selling through distributors or wholesalers, could AI ML help me to better forecast when to make my next order to replenish my supplies? Or if I am in the insurance sector, how can I use AI ML maybe to predict safe drivers and then to provide better rates for them? We want to help our customers think through the application of intelligence technologies to their business problem.
Right. So how do you think that CIOs are accepting the AI change and the implementation cycle which is required for the innovating their projects in operations, in sales, in customer engagement, and other operations of business entity? So how do you think AI plays a major role while for a CIO while investing in these technologies and different global vendors?
I think AI ML does a couple of things. One is it is able to do at scale what used to be very resource or person intensive. If you think about personalization, it used to be that it was very rules driven, and so it's like, if X happens, then Y, and then if Y, then Z. With AI ML, you just kind of create sort of the framework, and then basically the data comes through and you're learning as you go. Exactly. And it's going to get worse before it gets better, but once the algorithms learn, you're really going to be able to handle much more situations. And so the sheer scale at which you can do something like personalization is far higher than you could do before, and that opens up a lot of new possibilities. The second, which is the corollary, is really about if you can spend fewer resources on those sorts of activities, you can then release your people and your technological budgets to tackle other problems. Unfortunately, in this world, it's always going to be sort of an endless cycle of competition. So it's not like you can just take care of AI ML and be done with it, but it really does give you the bandwidth to look over into the next horizon.
Well, with this, Bryan, we bring our conversation to a close. Thank you very much for your expertise and adding a global perspective to our discussion. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Today we have Mr. Manish, who is Managing Director of Liferay. Welcome, Manish. Talking about the business strategies of Liferay for the Indian market, how important is this market for your global strategy, and what contribution is coming from the Indian market for your global revenue?
So Liferay has been traditionally an open source company. So India has always played the dual role in terms of our company strategy. One is that there is a lot of open source contributions from the developer side, and there's a lot of adoptions. So if you see the last 10 years, the number 2 downloads for Liferay has been from the India. So India has always played a very big role in the adoptions and making the software popular, as well as the contributing from the open source community side. So that has played a big role in the growth journey. Second one is that the number of customer and the business that we have always had from the India. So in last 10 years, we have been fortunate that we got very good support from the India market. Some of the largest bank as well as the insurance company has been using Liferay, and we have been serving them for more than 8 to 10 years, right? So it is not just, usually the India is basically the cost center and the development center for most of the company, but we have been the profit center from the day one.
Okay.
So we have customer support, not only the enterprise side, but also the government side. And of late, we have been focusing more on the government side because there are large opportunities for us, as well as we can see that Liferay as a technology, being the open source heritage, can play a very major role in terms of the digital adoptions in the country, and to make the open source successful in countries like India.
Correct. Manish, as we know that Indian market is getting volatile and uncertain, what's your view on the changing paradigms, and how are you navigating Liferay towards such uncertain market?
Yeah, so technology has always been very helpful for every organization in these uncertain and volatile times. So, and that's the role of the CIOs and CTOs become very important. Now, it is not just the providing the technology, but also the providing the right set of consulting to the CIOs, CTOs in these times, so that they can very effectively use their budgets in the right set of technology, which is going to help in their business. So the technology and the investment, the technology should never be considered as a cost center for any organizations. Now these days, CTO and CIOs are becoming the business partner for the organizations, and these are the right time for them to become a part of the business and helping the business to grow by using the right set of technologies. So the role of CIOs and CTOs become more important in these uncertain times. Right. Liferay as a technology is again always believing in that, working very closely with the customer and helping them by bringing the best practices all over the globe. As we are a global company, so we are working with all the offices, all the global customers, and then bringing the best practices to help the customer in saving a lot from using the right set of technology and making more ROI from their businesses.
Correct. Thank you very much, Manish. With this, we bring our discussion to a close. Thank you very much, viewers.